good evening to you. It is the 23rd day of July 2017. That means it is exactly 14 days until Kenyans make their decision at the ballot, and you are just in time for the Frontline with me, Catherine Achenga. Remember, on Frontline, we get to focus on some of the issues that are important to Kenyans as we approach the elections. The politics that has been shaping the week, a lot has been happening. 2 different rulings delivered by the courts as regards the elections. And of course, we'll also be taking a look at the presidential debate that is set to be taking place tomorrow. That is the 24th. There was a deputy president's debate that took place, and we will be looking at some of the issues that were raised by the particular candidates at that particular debate. Well, my panelists, it's time for me to introduce them to you tonight, and we begin on my far right, where we have Agostino Neto, who is the Member of Parliament for Ndiwa constituency. He is seeking to defend his seat as an independent candidate, having lost out on the ODM ticket. So we will be engaging him tonight on some of these issues as we approach the elections. Next to him, we have Violet Omwamba, who is vying for the Siaya County Women Representative seat on a Jubilee ticket. Next to her, we have Emmanuel Zai, who is the running mate for presidential candidate Dr. Ekuro Okut, who is vying on the Third Way Alliance ticket. Finally, we have Elijah Lengat, who is the Member of Parliament for Chesumei constituency. However, he will not be defending his seat. He has since defected to NASA and is running the presidential campaigns in North Rift region. Those are my panelists in studio. Remember, Frontline, we also broadcast it on radio. We do have Bonim Sambi in the radio studios. He will, of course, be calling some of our guests tonight, as well as getting feedback from you. So I want to hand over to Bonim Sambi to give you some of the channels where you can be able to interact with us on Frontline. Over to you, Bonim.
Asante sana Catherine Achenga. Bila shaka ni kweli niko katika studio ya KBC Radio Taifa, msikilizaji na mtazamaji, na hapa ndipo nitakuwa nikipokea maoni yako kuhusiana na mjadala ambao utakuwa unaendelea hewani. Na ili kushiriki katika mjadala huu utanipigia simu kupitia 0700176699 na pia utanipigia kupitia 0732745111 na pia 0776390699. Pia unaweza kunitumia ujumbe mfupi kwa nambari 22162 ukianza na neno taifa. Katika Twitter @KBC Channel 1 @KBC Radio Taifa #TheFrontline KBC. Na pia vile vile usiku wa leo nitakuwa nazungumza na wawaniaji urais wawili. Kwanza nitazungumza na mwaniaji urais wa kibinafsi ama yule huru independent candidate ambaye ni Jeff Kaluyu. Nitakuwa nasema naye kuhusiana na maoni yake, hususan kuhusu uamuzi uliotolewa na mahakama na pia maandalizi ya presidential debate hapo kesho. Na baadaye pia nitakuwa nasema naye Ekuru Aukot, mwaniaji urais kwa tiketi ya muungano wa Third Alliance. Kwa hivyo yote haya yatafanyika papa hapa katika studio hii ya KBC Radio Taifa. Lakini kwa sasa narejea kwako Catherine, uanze mazungumzo rasmi.
Asante sana, Bonim Sambi. Thank you, Boni, for that. And it's time for me to engage my panelists. And let's begin with, what happened in the courts this Friday, Thursday and Friday. But the ruling regarding Ghurair being given the go-ahead to print the presidential ballot papers. I know Third Way Alliance was the one that initially went to court with this particular issue. So I'll begin with you, Zai. Are you satisfied with the ruling by the courts?
Thank you, Kathy. And yeah, I think we made our position on that. That given all the kind of scenario right now in terms of the preparedness of IBC, at first we had said that that they don't appeal that and they simply go and execute what the High Court had done. But now that they went in and the appeals court decided, we have supported that ruling. And we have gone ahead actually to now put in some recommendations to IBC to still ensure that the Kenyan people are still have anxieties out there, whether we will have a fair and credible election.
What were your reservations, in the first place?
The reservations was very, very simple. That the other presidential candidates had somehow had access to the whole procurement process. On our end, we did not. So much of our argument was the public participation, which the ruling came in favor of us. That simply we needed to participate, the Kenyan people needed to participate on that, and that's what they appealed. So the ruling at this point is such that they go ahead and print with Ghurair. We support that, but now we have suggested some few things to make sure simply that the Kenyan people will basically trust this process. And one of it is simply to make sure that our agents, presidential agents, will participate in the whole of that printing process, the sealing of that ballot papers. When they come into the country, there is more secure way and a trusted way where are very transparent, where they're distributed, and the Kenyan people simply get to believe that that this has been a fair process.
I think the argument by the court also was that the fact that it was put out in the newspapers, when they advertise and say they've given the tender to so and so, to that extent they say that was public participation.
That is correct, but I think at this point that's water under the bridge. The ruling has happened. It's ongoing. There is that appeal that was done, I think, from the NASA side. We are not part of it. On our end, we have said that time is critical. We want the elections to happen on the 8th. IBC needs all the help that it needs, and not this oscillation between Jubilee and NASA on what they want or they do not want. So we are fully supporting the ruling with the recommendation that we made to make sure that simply IBC does its work with the mind of the Kenyan people.
Lagat, what about for NASA? Are you satisfied with the ruling?
No, we are not satisfied with the ruling because, first of all, the tendering was not fair. It was single sourcing. And we expected so many other companies to participate. So that
the law allows for single sourcing.
Single sourcing, it depends on who the company belongs to. Because if the company belongs to Jubilee, single sourcing will mean that Jubilee has been favored. But since this is a competition for many parties, and when it is a competition for many parties, it is not one party to make decision. It is all these other parties to contribute, or we need somebody who will be on a fair ground. But when you look at it right now, and when you go back to what has reflected, it means this company belongs to Jubilee. So it is not fair for all the other Kenyans.
Violet, does the company belong to Jubilee?
Thank you, Catherine. I want to tell Mheshimiwa, that company doesn't belong to any party. We, as an independent party, we did the process, the normal process that anybody can tender and do the normal process, and you won. And they won. But then, coming back to your question, we are very satisfied with the ruling. In fact, that was the best ruling was done.
Why is that?
Because one, I know I'm not depending the IBC, because that is an independent institution. But then, because it's the court, and they came up with that ruling, they had the whole mechanism how to come up with that ruling. And the other thing is, the country is, we are waiting for this election. And I'm sure everybody just wants this election to be done and forget about it. And our prayer is, can we do this election and finish about all this issue and move on? Because everybody wants this thing to be done. And for the court to rule that way, one, they have restored back that trust that every Mwananchi wanted to hear, that IBC, they are going to conduct the election free, fair, and credible process. So for us, as Jubilee people, we are very okay. If election be, in the event
that the Court of Appeal had upheld the decision by the High Court, would you have been speaking the same way?
Yes, depends on the issues that are raised with our issues. This thing, it's we all want that we have a free, fair, and credible election.
All right, Neto, are you satisfied that the elections will be free, fair, based on the ruling?
I think the point that you make, of course, the elections are not going to be free, fair, and credible. and I think Kenyans look like we do not learn. The way you see the tendering process has happened, you can as well guess that whatever results come out of it will not be credible. I think that we've been, Kenya is perpetually in this cycle of chasing its own tail. We know elections come every 5 years, but the level of preparedness for these elections is always questionable. One, I do not think it's fair in the first place for IBC to have done single sourcing for such an important act as ballot paper tendering. I mean, to straitjacket Kenyans into one space and say that there's no time to do a credible tendering process, I think that is really, really unfair. In 2013, the same thing happened, where we had single sourcing of BVR kits and single sourcing of election material. That collapsed. Now again, you're forcing Kenyans to have a single sourcing of an important thing as a ballot paper tendering process, which some people have already cast aspersions on. This coming on the background of voter register, which is not even, we don't even know how many people are in the voter register, whether the voter register exists in the first place. I really think that there really, really are serious issues, and you actually can question if this election is going to be free and fair.
But to what extent, can we engage public participation?
It's not an issue about public participation. It's an issue about what is free and fair ought to be seen by the ordinary man in the street that this is free and fair. That NASA is already raising issues. That means NASA, the ordinary man in the street, is not convinced that there is going to be a free and fair process. If people lost an election, and I'm happy to lose an election if at all it's free and fair, but if at all, for example, Ghurair, as it is, had relationships with Jubilee. They were shaking hands, they were having tea together. You really, really question why. Then you straitjacket us into having a single source, but the same guy who's been having tea and a party with the, I think it's not really fair.
Is it fair to say that if I know you, that you should not get business?
No, it is not that way. Normally, we have been working as MPs. But the issue is, even when giving out a tender for a road, you cannot single source and give to one tender.
What if you are out of time?
There's no, it is not an emergency.
The question about out of time, Catherine, this is the problem. That we know the elections are going to be done in 5 years.
5 years, yes.
The commissioners came in slightly, 6 months to an election. There was a lot of pretty time to do a tendering process. So you cannot say there was no time. In fact, the court's ruling...
Who is not doing what they're supposed to do?
Let me take us back a bit. The reason that we are here at this point is because Ghurair was procured. And Ghurair was procured, and then a few weeks later, it came into the newspapers that there was probably an inappropriate contract between the president, who is vying in this election, that potentially he met these guys, and potentially his relative is related in the whole company setup. Mm-hmm. Now, in the meeting that IBC called in, it was a conversation about the preparedness, actually. And that was one of the items that came in, the issue of the register came in. But what we found out, honestly, as Third Way Alliance, was what's appalling. Raphael Tuju was seated on the other side. He brought in he didn't say that this meeting did not happen, but he said that Raila Odinga wanted also to get a tender from South Africa, which was worth 2.5. Our conclusion was very simple, that this deal is about the Jubilee and the NASA, all of them wanting two things. Mm-hmm. One, it's the business of the 2.5 tendering, and secondly, they want to control the printing of the ballot. Mm-hmm.
So you're saying it was more commercial.
So I think it's motivated by those two things of commercial and simply controlling the ballot printing. So I think at this point, I should say this. Our platform in Third Way Alliance is honest and transformative leadership. We are aligning with IBC that IBC is in a sorry state where they are being hit on both sides. Mm-hmm.
I think, madam, if you think that this is a deal between Jubilee and NASA, mm-hmm. then why should we should have taken somebody else who is not pro NASA or who is not pro Jubilee? Mm-hmm. Yes. It was better for that for it to happen that way.
But like he said, we have had 5 years to prepare. We knew that an election was coming. Why is it that we are procuring at the last?
That's normal for Kenyans. Mm-hmm. I've been an athlete. Always, when you are preparing for a major championship, even Olympics, it is always a rush to the last minute. And that is also what happens to
I mean, with due respect to my friend Langat, who is a good runner and an Olympic medalist at that, I think you cannot compare the election preparedness. You know, one thing that is happening right now is many Kenyans are moving away from like the city to the rural areas. They're moving away from parts of the coast, going to other places. The reason why people vote so that at least they can give government that gives them the results. We cannot be looking at every 5 years in Kenya as a place where violence is cyclic, where people are going to be displaced from their homes. So I really think that really, if you have to really vote, then I really think our vote ought to count. And that preparedness ought to really be the first thing that is given into consideration. Look, we've been warned for several times that you really need to prepare for an election. Even in the first instance, IEBC knowing for a fact that you've come into office 6 months, 7 months as a commission, they should have been prepared so that, to tell us that they didn't have enough time to tender single sourcing, I really think is really unfair. But what the Alliance is saying, I really think, let's not look at this thing as a Jubilee NASA competition. Yes. Let's look at it from a nationalist point. We are saying that, look, at the end of the day, the people who are going to get hurt are not just Jubilee or NASA supporters. There are some Kenyans there in Third Way Alliance and some Kenyans there in other political parties. But I really think that Kenya needs to have credible elections. And I really think the best thing that should have happened is we should have really considered giving some more time, despite whatever has happened, so that at least a fair and a good tendering process should have been done.
All right, let me engage Violet on this. Let me first engage Violet on this. I mean, he's brought in a new aspect, that this is commercial. What would be your response to that?
My view, I think maybe NASA, they are not ready for this election, because that's why they're making all that allocation and all that. I think here we need to focus, because already the ruling has been done. Let's just focus. If they want to what they want, let them choose whom they want, and we move on. This issue of
it depends on how the election is conducted, because you cannot say let Kenyans be choose whoever they want, but through an unfair election. What we need is a fair election, and that is what we are fighting for.
Mheshimiwa, we haven't gone for that election yet. We are still going there. How did you know that it's not going to be fair?
Right, you have to go through the, but just going back, to what you're saying, in as much as we are moving towards this election,
yes,
why is it that it has taken us this long to begin the tendering process? Are we saying that as a country we have failed? We are just last-minute people, and we want to change things at the last minute? That ends up looking like someone is trying to do something shoddy.
I don't think that we are doing, or someone is doing something shoddy. It's only that they're following the procedures, they're following the law, the rules and laws. And to my view, I think...
I think Violet is speaking because she thinks Jubilee got the sort of ruling that they wanted. But I think in the first place, IEBC was also wrong in trying to contest that particular decision of the courts. I really think that being an independent body, someone else ought to have been doing it on their behalf as opposed to IEBC itself. Because one, you're agreeing that you're the ones who have eggs on your face, and then the next thing, you're the ones you're supposed to be independent, and one of the people who's gone to court is actually contesting that particular election, and is contesting against your decisions and your inefficiency. I really think it was really in bad faith for IEBC to have gone to court to appeal.
I think also, we don't have to wait for an election to be conducted, so that when if bad results comes in, that is when we are planning to take action. What we need to do is, that is why I'm saying we need to be prepared early enough, so that we can avoid all these other issues. You remember the issue of 2007, whereby the elections was messed and there was a post-election violence. So we don't need to go to that far again. That is why we are fighting right now to get everything in all the procedures to be in place, so that we don't get bad results and we make Kenyans to fight again.
Catherine, I think if I may really quick. I think we need also to be aware that IBC, it was the Code Brigade which actually chased out that first commissions which were there, and there was a lot going on now on that. So this is an institution which has had a lot of fights in its preparedness. So I think that there needs to be responsibility taken by NASA. There needs to be responsibility taken by Jubilee, who has a sitting president who is in there if he's met Al Ghurair, why did he meet Al Ghurair? You know? So our conclusion is this, and this is why I think that when we took the position that we did, we said we do not want to appeal this.
So do you feel like, you know, NASA hijacked your agenda in the first place?
No. That's not right. NASA did what they did, we did what we did because we knew what was right. You know, our presidential candidate is a constitutional lawyer. So we knew what we wanted to do to accomplish. The Kenyan people have seen it. I think it's very clear. The Kenyan people know that we have a leadership crisis. The leadership crisis is caused by NASA and Jubilee. And the effect of it is that IBC right now is simply in a storage state. They need to leave IBC alone.
All right. We want to go to Boni Msambi, who is in the radio studios, to get feedback and, of course, to find out what the public thinks about this particular discussion. Over to you, Boni.
Asante Catherine, bila shaka msikilizaji, tunagusia masuala mazito hapa yanayohusiana na uamuzi uliotolewa na mahakama ya rufaa wiki jana ya kwamba swala la uchapishaji makaratasi ya kupigia kura lazima liendelee, kumaanisha kwamba kampuni ya Al Ghurair itaendelea kuchapisha makaratasi hayo. Tumesikia maoni ya walio hapo studio Catherine, na sasa itakuwa vyema pia tusikie maoni ya wawaniaji huru nao wanasema nini upande wa wawaniaji wa urais. Na kwenye line ya simu ninaye Dr. Jeff Kaluyu ambaye anawania kiti cha urais kama mwaniaji huru. Habari daktari?
Nzuri sana. How are you doing?
Tuko salama, tunashukuru.
Yes.
Asante kwa kupokea. Asante kwa kupokea simu yetu. Na moja kwa moja kwenye swala hili. Je, wewe ulichukuliaje uamuzi wa mahakama ya rufaa?
Mahakama kuhusu uchapishaji wa ballot.
Ndio.
Yeah, but kwanza nataka kuwasalimia Wakenya wote popote walipo katika Jamhuri ya Kenya na ulimwenguni kote wanaposikiza. Maoni yangu kwa hiyo ni sawa sawa, manake bila kupoteza wakati tunatakiwa kuchapisha haya makaratasi. Tumejua kama haya makaratasi nitakiwa kuchapishwa particularly on the presidential ballot area. Wale wengine MCS, MPs and senators zilikuwa zimeruhusiwa kuchapishwa, lakini hakukuwa na tofauti ya kuchapisha na makaratasi ya presidential candidate. Ilikuwa more sensitive. Kwa hivyo mimi naona mahakama ilifanya vizuri to save time, na ndio we promise the Kenyans there has to be elections on August 8. Any other decisions would have made these elections not be held on August 8. Kwa hivyo kwa mahakama, it is not about just the technical part of it. Ni vile tu ni lazima waangalie maslahi ya wananchi na wazalendo and their expectations and their promises. So sometimes the law is usually give and take, and the best interest of the Kenyans be put forward. Hii uamuzi wa mahakama ilikuwa to the best interest of Kenyans, ndio tuwapatie elections on August 8.
Mheshimiwa Kaluyu, kulingana nawe, ulikuwa na tatizo lolote wakati kampuni hii ya Al Ghurair ilipopewa kandarasi hii na IEBC? Kwa sababu NASA walikuwa nadai kwamba wenye kampuni hii walikuwa washirika wa karibu na Rais Uhuru Kenyatta. Wewe mwenyewe binafsi ulikuwa na shida na hilo?
Mimi mwenyewe sikuwa na any tatizo yoyote, manake niliona na nilisema tukiwa Hilton Hotel. Nilisema problems mingi hii za makaratasi kuchapishwa makaratasi inaweza kuchapishwa popote. Ni vile baada ya kuchapishwa makaratasi ndio hapo kunaweza kuwa na mzozo kidogo, whether the safety ya makaratasi imewekwa, kama imetransportiwa ama it has been transported to the right places in good safety and all the papers are in good order by the time they get to the ballot. Mimi sikuwa na problem yoyote kwa kuchapisha makaratasi. Ingechapishwa huko, ningetaka nione imechapishwa nyumbani, ndio our small businesses are protected, ndio tuwapatie biashara badala ya kupatia biashara wale wengine. Hata wangekuja hapa to hire people locally, the same company, I would not have had problem. In fact, I would have preferred wakwe hapa ndio wapatie wananchi kazi, manake we really out on unemployment. We go hire people outside. But for the best interest of Kenyans, kuchapisha makaratasi, I've never had any problem because they can still be printed outside for the best interest of the Kenyans and for the comfort of everybody else. And I understand NASA walikuwa wanasema wanashuku kama zitakuwa, by the time they come over here, they have been printed enough or whatever they were claiming. I can understand they would be interested because, they are being spotted like one of the big, political parties. So I can understand. Lakini watu hapa injini nilikuwa nataka wapewe kazi na sikuwa wherever it is printed, as long as the safety of the ballot is transported to the ballot places, na serikali ina make sure sisi tunapata fair and free election.
Mwisho kabisa Mheshimiwa Kaluyu, masuala mengi sana yanayohusu uchaguzi mkuu yametatuliwa mahakamani. Hiyo ni kumaanisha kwamba kumekuwa na dukuduku za hapa na pale. Wewe mwenyewe kama mwaniaji urais una imani kwamba IEBC itaandaa uchaguzi huru na wa haki?
Actually, mimi niko na imani as of now, manake wamepewa madaraka wafanye hivyo. In fact, when it comes to Kenyans, I've been also concerned, and it will not happen under my administration. If Kenyan people give me the opportunity to be their commander-in-chief, there has to be the office of the ombudsman. Make sure things do not end up in court. In fact, that does not sit well with me. Every single thing has to end up in court. Milimani court, people running around up and down. There has to be time when people sit down and they understand each other. I've been at the IBC. I've seen them work very hard. We give the credit where it is due. They work very hard. To make the process become this way, Chebukati does not sleep, to be honest with you. Yeah, well, I don't have to be that exact, but I have seen it work late hours and long hours. So I expect them to deliver that. He has promised that, and I expect him to act according to the Constitution of Kenya. So I think from Chebukati, he has good intentions. I've spoken to great people like Commissioner Ross Akambo. I've asked them right on the eyes, are you going to do the right thing? They have assured me they're going to do the right thing, and I expect that to happen. Now, there are other places where it can be delivered differently, like if it is be unfair, it doesn't have to come from IBC. IBC is not the only source of unfair elections. Did the protecting groups or the police officers, did they do the right thing? Did the members of parliament do the right thing? Was there scuttling? Was there violence? So IEBC is not the only possible source. I think, in fact, it's the least source of fair and good elections. We need security. And thank you so much for having me. And I'm asking Kenyans to give me the opportunity to be their commander-in-chief, and I will serve them without all these troubles they see.
Maybe in 30 seconds, kwa sababu umetaja hilo, what is that one thing ambayo nataka kuwafanyia Wakenya wakikupatia nafasi? One thing.
I will be the jobs president, and I will make sure they are trained to do the jobs for 21st century. I will cut 50% of the youth unemployment, and you know what? Kenya will be back again. It will shine in Africa to be the gateway to Africa, a shining city on the hill, and a beacon of hope.
Asante. Asante Mheshimiwa Kaluyu. Huyo ni mwaniaji rais wa kibinafsi ambaye anawania kama independent candidate, Mheshimiwa Japheth Kaluyu ama ukipenda Jeff Kaluyu, na amesema kwamba yeye ana imani kwamba IEBC itaandaa uchaguzi huru na wa haki, na amesema kwamba hana shida na mahakama vile ambavyo iliamua. Kwako Catherine.
Asante sana Bwana Msambi. They are getting feedback on the perceptions of the view rather by the presidential candidate who is running on an independent ticket. They are just expressing his perception of this, and of course saying that he is confident that IBC will be able to deliver a free and fair elections come August 8th. Well, we take a short break on the front line, but when we come back, we'll also be getting feedback from the public, so stay tuned. Welcome back. This is the Frontline. My guest in studio, we have Agostino Neto, who is the Member of Parliament for Ndhiwa constituency, he will be vying as an independent candidate in the August 8th general election. We also have with us Violet Omwamba, who is vying for Sierra County-Woman representative seat on a Jubilee ticket. Emmanuel Nzai, who is the running mate of Dr. Ekuro Okot, who is vying for president under the Third Way Alliance ticket. And finally, we have Elijah Lagat, who is the Member of Parliament, the current Member of Parliament for Chisumei constituency, and he has now joined the NASA Brigade. He will not be defending his seat, but is leading the presidential campaigns within the North Rift. Before we went for the break, of course, a lot of discussions regarding the ruling by Ghurair, but I want us to move, forward and focus on what has been said as regards this particular election. We've seen the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, the acting Cabinet Secretary for Interior, saying that during election day, once you vote, you have to move out of the polling stations, and only those who are accredited should remain in the polling stations. Do you think that is a valid point? And I'll begin with you, Violet.
Thank you, Catherine. I think the CS is doing his work, and because of the security purposes, and try to imagine that in every polling stations we have those people surrounded by those ones that were waiting for the election to be announced. In the whole country, what will happen? So for me, I think he's doing his work. He's trying to safeguard the safety of Wananchi.
Why do you think it's been perceived as, with suspicion? It's been received with suspicion. There are those who are feeling that now this is a way of someone trying to manipulate the polls.
That's why I've said earlier that maybe for those ones who are feeling that they're going to lose, they're the ones who are complaining. But for those ones who are feeling that, yes, we want security, we want to safeguard, we want to protect our people, I think he's doing his work. Yes.
Nzai, what do you think?
I think I would want to hear more in terms of the rationalization on that. We know, based on all conversations so far, that for sure this election is highly contested at this point, and to the extent that we are talking about all the issues going on. So I think there is all concerns of security, and for sure the government has a responsibility to secure every polling station and make sure there's simply security across the board for all the citizens who come in and vote. Now, I think the onus still need to remain on IBC to ensure that whatever happens, the agents which are on all the station and the whole mechanism to make sure that every voter who votes and every candidate who is in there, they have enough agents, and the rules are followed, and they can ensure that there will be simply a fair and credible election where every candidate on the ballot is satisfied, and the citizen who comes in to vote is satisfied.
Neto, do you think perhaps the decision by the CS is driven by the fact that this time, according, the court ruled that the presidential results that are announced at the constituency level are final? Do you think perhaps that's what could have informed
I really think that Matiang'i might have been doing a very good job as Minister for Education, but I really think that he needs to understand that security and elections is a different ballgame. One, in terms of elections, the person with the last call is the returning officer with regard to a particular constituency, or the presiding officer with regard to a particular polling station. So I really think that the person who needs to make the decision as to whether there's insecurity or otherwise is the presiding officer. That's the electoral official. In fact, the policeman who is at the particular polling station is at the employ of the presiding officer or the returning officer. So it is the judgment cannot be by a cabinet secretary sitting somewhere in Nairobi giving us rules and restrictions. In fact, I'm wondering where he gets that particular law from. Because you see, law needs to emanate from some source or some regulation of sorts, and that particular regulation can only be made by the IBC. So I really think
Don't you think, it has got a lot to do with what we have seen before, the kind of violence that is witnessed at the polling stations? Perhaps we are trying to minimize on the numbers within the polling station to avoid this.
There'll be no violence if there's no electoral malpractice. So you're actually trying to anticipate electoral malpractice, but why would a cabinet secretary be anticipating an electoral malpractice? This is the problem. If at all everything else is going to be free and fair, we voted in many elections, Kenyans will go if there's the balloting is in order, if the counting is in order, a presiding officer is doing the right job. No one will actually cause violence. But if at all you've already premeditated there's going to be violence, then there's something you're telling us that we do not know.
Lagat, I know NASA has really objected to this directive.
Yeah, even me, I don't accept, because, whenever there is a fair election, whenever somebody votes and his right or her right is given, there will be no violence. People will accept. If the results are not fair, then that is where chaos can be caused. But otherwise, if everything is taken in the right way, there's no problem. Even the voters.
So you're convinced that we want all the voters to, crowd at the polling station?
Not all the voters, but not everybody will crowd there.
Catherine, you know what you're saying?
It is not all the voters.
It's the principle of who is going to be in charge of the elections. You see, if the cabinet secretary is already trying to give directives on behalf of IEBC, then I think there's really a serious problem. He's not in charge. If at all there's a problem of violence in Kisumu or in Homa Bay or Ndiwa, then you can call in the cabinet secretary in terms of deploying his security troops. But for him to start making decisions on behalf of IEBC, I don't think there's something wrong. He really needs to understand where the lines are cut across, his jobs and those of IEBC.
The decision should be made by the IEBC. It is not the CS.
So, Violet, do you believe that, IEBC is not pronouncing itself well enough for the public to feel that it is not taking charge of this particular election? It appears that different players are the ones who are making decisions for IEBC. If it's not the court, it's, the government. If it's not...
No, I don't think so. Because one, I know IEBC itself, it's an independent institution. The same with the parties. There's a coalition, NASA, there's Jubilee, and there's this other one. So for IEBC...
Third Alliance.
But then if the CS has come up and said that directive, it means that with kind of the violence that we have been having all around the country, he wants to protect the country, security-wise. But for the IEBC, they need to come up very clear and say, hey, look here, you people, we need to do this and this and this. We need to put system in place. We need to do...
Let her make her point. Let her make her point.
Yes.
For me, I think the IEBC, let him do his work, let the parties do their work, and let even the CS do his own work. Yes.
All right.
What I think is, if IEBC had complained that there's suspicion of something, that is when the CS can come in. But if IEBC has not complained over any issue based on the election or the voting, then why should the CS chip in before any complaint or before
the CS?
The CS should have conducted the IEBC whether there is a problem, and it should be made known to the public, not just decision being made somewhere else.
Right. I want us to go to Boni Msambi and get feedback from the public. We haven't heard from the public. So Boni Msambi, let's move over to you and find out what is the public saying before we come back.
Nachenga, na bila shaka najua msikilizaji naye mahali alipo anawashwa kweli kweli. Ningependa kujua kutoka kwako msikilizaji, msimamo wako ni upi? Dr. Fred Matiang'i ambaye ni kaimu waziri wa usalama amesema kwamba ukipiga kura nenda nyumbani. Hakuna mtu ambaye ataruhusiwa kukaa karibu na kituo cha kupigia kura kama hajaruhusiwa kisheria na kupitia maandishi. NASA imesema kwamba mwananchi ukipiga kura kaa hapo ulinde kura. Sasa je, unaunga mkono wito wa Dr. Fred Matiang'i kwamba ukipiga kura we toka hapa uende kabisa, au unaunga mkono wito wa NASA kwamba ukipiga kura kaa hapo linda kura? Wacha nisikie maoni yako. 0700176699. Hello, Radio Taifa nasema na nani? Tafadhali ukiwa na sauti ya juu ya runinga au radio itabidi nikukate kwa sababu ya mwangu, yani feedback. Habari yako?
Salama sana bwana Boni Msambi.
Ndio, naongea na nani kutoka wapi?
Huyu ndio yule Pari Imbwaka, niko eneo na Sireda Hills.
Unataka watu wakipiga kura waende nyumbani au unataka wabaki hapo walinde kura?
Mimi naona njia mzuri bwana Boni Msambi. Heri waelekee nyumbani, manake hata kama ni kulinda, utakuwa linda leo na kesho mpaka matokeo yatokee kweli tu.
Haya, asante kwa maoni yako. Habari yako?
Halo Boni Msambi.
Niko hapa bwana, waitwa nani?
Mimi naitwa John Mkaravia Kapukangani.
Maoni yako?
Maoni yangu, Matiang'i iko right. Watu wakipika kura au waende nyumbani. Hakuna kazi yetu tutafanya hapo. Sisi kazi yetu ni kupika kura na turudi nyumbani.
Okay. Radio Taifa lo.
Radio Taifa lo.
Naongea na nani?
Nipita kutoka Potopoto Chembeli na Ndikaondi.
Ndio, maoni yako?
Maoni yangu, naunga mkono ukishapiga kura nenda nyumbani bwana. Nenda ona TV huko nyumbani.
Haya, Radio Taifa lo.
Boni Msambi kakangu.
Karibu sana.
George na Parkusande ni Laikipia.
Na wewe maoni yako ni yapi?
Maoni yangu mimi naunga huyu rais wetu, huyu naibu wa huyu waziri wa usalama Matiang'i. Kwamba nikipiga kura na Barkusa aende ashuke kondoo zake ama aende mahali anataka ama nini ninatafuta hapo nini? Nani mpiga kura? Kitu gani tena?
Haya, Radio Safe, hello.
Hello Mboni.
Yes.
Nasema
Yes.
ukipiga simu lazima uende nyumbani.
Ukipiga kura sisi.
Ukipiga kura enda nyumbani.
Ndio.
Yes.
Okay, asante. Hujasema jina lakini. Hello, habari yako?
Hello, Radio Safe.
Yes, unaitwa nani, unapiga kutoka wapi?
Naitwa Samson Kavara na kutoka Gilgil.
Gilgil. Wewe unataka ukipiga kura uende nyumbani ama unatakaje?
Mimi naunga Matiang'i mkono kabisa kwa sababu tukisema tukae pale, tutazua furugu, si hata ile ati kulinda kura ya rais.
Aha.
Utapata hata pengine mimi naunga mjumbe fulani mkono. Nisikia kwamba ameanguka na mpinzani wake ndiye amepita. Obviously nitaanza rafsha itaanzia pale. So mimi naomba wananchi wote, kama tunataka kudumisha amani, piga kura, keep off 400 meters from polling station.
Anasema huyu mpigaji simu wa mwisho hapa Catherine kwamba angependa watu wakipiga kura waende nyumbani kwa sababu wakikaa hapo karibu alafu stories zianze ni kama huyu ameshindwa, ni kama fulani ndio yuko mbele, huenda kikawa chanzo cha fujo. Je, Mheshimiwa Elijah wa NASA hapa katika studio, ningependa unijibu, je, unakubaliana na huyo mpigaji kura kwamba ikiwa wafuasi watakaa karibu na kituo cha kupiga kura huenda ukawa mwanzo wa rabsha? Mheshimiwa Elijah.
Bas, I think hii si mara ya kwanza ya kwa Wakenya kupiga kura. Watu wamekuwa wakipiga kura. Kuna wengine ambaye wanapenda kuona matokeo ikitokea hapo, na kuna wengine ambaye wanaona hawana haja, wanataka kwenda nyumbani. So kwa hivyo hii si mara ya kwanza kwa Wakenya kupiga kura. Mimi nimewahi piga kura. Kuna wakati hata mimi nilikuwa nataka kuona yule mtu ambaye nimepigia kura amepata kura ngapi, nikiona hapo kwa mahali ya kupiga kura. Lakini kuna wale ambaye hawana kazi nyingine ama wako na shughuli zingine, wanaweza enda kwa shughuli zao. Lakini sio lazima watu wote wapaki hapo. Lakini kuna wengine ambaye wako na haja ya kuona matokeo hapo ikihesabiwa. Ndio mimi nasema ninaona hakuna haja ya kufukuza kila mtu. Kuna wale wangependa kuona matokeo na kuna wale hawana haja, wanataka kusikia baadaye.
All right, thank you very much. But we'll have to move on to different issue. But obviously, when you know the feedback from the public, a majority of them feeling that once you vote, just go home. I guess it.
I mean, Catherine, that is the problem of polarizing a nation. You understand, most of the callers really already have taken a position which actually initially did not exist. No one was actually bothered about people being at the polling stations or not. But because Matiang'i, who is perceived to be Jubilee, has made a pronouncement, they really think that is law and order.
So this is the problem. It's more of a perception than the actual reality.
It's the problem of being a partisan, and that's the reason we're saying.
Our time is up, gentlemen. Our time is up. So I want us just, I want you, to give us your final word. But before that, tomorrow we're having a presidential debate. On Monday we had a deputy presidential debate, and a lot of issues were raised from the deputy presidential debate regarding the two-tier system that was used by the debate Media Limited to come up with how we are going to carry out this particular debate. And I want to begin with you, Nzai, because you were one of those invited for that particular debate, and you did not show up at 5:30. You came later on. Was the two-tier system really discriminatory?
Absolutely. The two-tier system is discriminative, and we still stand by that. What we did was the independent candidates and ourselves, 6 of us, came in together. We engaged the debates media group to ask them simply that 8 candidates standing to talk to the Kenyan people, I think is a fair thing, given that, and this has happened, it happened in the last election. The contention was about the time. We said, increase that time, make it 4 hours, have a break in between. If a Kenyan can go in, stand in a line to vote for a whole day, for sure you can have 4 hours and speak to the Kenyan people. But somehow, I think what we got to find out after not attending that first debate, which I think it was unfortunate for the Kenyan people because only one person stood up there. I think the Kenyan people have heard, the organizers have also heard, that the problem again is the NASA and Jubilee, who simply do not want to debate. Okay, so on us tomorrow, We are prepared. We will go there. We will go.
So your presidential candidate will be there at 5:30.
We were there today to do the rehearsals. We're very, very much ready. We will go tell the Kenyan our vision for this country. We are still hopeful, and we are asking now that we have the Jubilee and NASA leaders here, that I think the Kenyan people, it will be a fair way if their leaders simply show up and have one debate tomorrow.
And what do you say? I mean, Violet, the fact that, you know, I know your presidential candidate Uhuru Kenyatta also expressed concerns with, you know, the modalities and the format that was being used in this particular debate.
I think our president is ready, and based on what he has done in this country, his record is very straight, and we are ready to go. Yes.
So are you saying he will be attending the presidential debate tomorrow?
He will.
Excellent.
All right. Lagat, I know also the NASA principal, the presidential candidate, had also expressed his concerns earlier and said that the format that is being used, they were not happy with it. Has he changed his mind, sister?
No, he has not changed his mind. You know what is also there? You know, we have limited time. Based on what is happening right now in the campaigns, there are so many other areas which has not been covered. You know that campaign period is too short, and you know, coming again here is so hard because of what is happening outside there. And again, the format is not good. It's not fair, and that is why
not fair in what
all these people should have been consulted so that they give a way that they want to be used.
Yes. Neto, I mean, do you believe that perhaps the candidates should be given the questions prior, should be told, you know, what they are going to be asked?
I really think first that one thing I like to say is that, you know, public office is about accountability. It's about surveys. And I really think that all the presidential candidates, all the running mates ought to make themselves present in those various debates, so that at least Kenyans can ask them questions. Kenyans need to engage with them. Kenyans really do not just ambush us with the manifestos, which you can then not defend. You know, really, manifestos can be documents that are prepared elsewhere. We really want to see and respond to you. You know, extempore sorts of questions really expose the wit, the grit, and the intelligence of a leader. And if I told you, you allow the Kenyan people to engage them at that particular point, I really think it's fair. So I really think that it's a good thing that we've started these debate issues.
Putting it as a two-tier based on, you know, what was used, those who got 5% and below debating together, those at 5% and above, do you think that wasn't fair?
I really think that the debate ought to have all the candidates across the board, because then you can then engage on various issues. In fact, the 5%, the 3% people can actually engage the 90-45% sort of opinion pollers. So I really think it's fair for everyone else to be present.
And by the way, that threshold of 5%, we never saw the polls to see who has 5% and 3%, you know, all the way to that debate, and that was one of the contention. But I think I think I'm glad my friend here agrees with us. There is still time, and at this point, with the conversations that we've been having here about the potential crisis that we have, the heightened temperatures, that I think the Kenyan people would want to see all the 8 candidates so that the Kenyan people can be assured.
That is what we also agree.
The whole idea about these candidates going in and calling in rallies is talking to the Kenyan people, is not engaging, and it's not accountability. We want them to be accountable, so we challenge them. Let them come in. Let them come into one debate. Let's do it for 4 hours, and as long as the 2 agree, that will happen.
All right, then we have pressed for time, so I just want to throw it over to Bonnie Msambi before we wrap up from this side of the studio. Over to you, Bonnie.
Naam, asante Catherine kwa kuja kwangu. Nimejaribu kumtafuta Dr. Ekuru Aukot ili nipate maoni yake kuhusiana na kama atahudhuria kesho au la, na kama anafurahishwa na muundo ama mpangilio wa kesho au la, lakini sijaweza kumpata, hajaweza kushika simu. Labda tusikie kwako msikilizaji, wewe unatarajia nini wakati kutakapoandaliwa mjadala miongoni mwa wawaniaji urais hapo kesho? Matarajio yako ni yapi? Labda nisikie tu kutoka kwa watu watatu kabla ya kufunga. Radio Taifa.
Hello, Bonnie.
Yes.
Jackson Matoka. Na kusema kweli, sijaona umuhimu wote kwa huo mjadala. Sababu mambo bado itakuwa ni yale tu. Na unajua watu saizi wa Kenya wanaangazia watu wawili peke yake.
Huyu ni Raila Odinga na Rais Uhuru Kenyatta.
Kwa hivyo hakuna haja ya kusikia kutoka kwa wengine.
Sioni haja ya mjadala, manake tayari usiwanazungumza sasa makura. Sasa sioni umuhimu mjadala hata kidogo. Hakuna haja.
Aha. Wacha tusikie mwingine mmoja. Halo, habari yako?
Nzuri, habari ya studio.
Salama, nasema na nani tafadhali? Hello, nasema na nani? Umepotea. Halo, habari yako?
Halo.
Yes, naongea na nani?
Habari bwana Mkambi.
Salama, naongea na nani?
Unaongea na John Kionga. Mimi maoni yangu mimi nasema.
Yes.
Unajua farasi ni wawili. Sasa hao wengine mimi sioni maana. Hakuna tu haja ya uongozi ya kuongea.
Aha, asante. Catherine, hapa inasemekana hakuna haja ya hao wengine. Emmanuel Zai, utakwenda kumwambia wako vile Wakenya wanavyosema au unaonaje? Catherine na Emmanuel, mtujibu hayo.
Emmanuel, kwako ukimalizia, you give your closing remarks.
Asante sana. Ni sababu hizo ndio Daktari Ghurair Aukot na Emmanuel Zai na Third Way Alliance tumeibuni na tumesimama hapa kuwania urais. Kwamba hii mambo ya farasi wawili wamechoka na hawatupeleki kokote. Hiyo ni kwanza. Na kama wangekuwa wana ushauri wa kutosha, wangesimama ili Wakenya wote watusikize sote kwa pamoja. Hivi sasa tumesikia haya mambo ambayo yanaendelea, na yote ni kwa sababu ya uongozi mbaya tu ambao kunao. Na Ghurair Aukot na mimi tumesimama tuwapatie Wakenya chaguo la tatu.
The third option. Asante sana. Lagat, tukimalizia. It's a two-horse race.
No, it is not. We need all the others to be inclusive, so that they can also we can also gauge their views. And I also want to say, I think there's somebody who said our mavarasi wawili wamechoka. It is not that way. I worked with all the other principles. All the other principles. I worked with them in the last parliament, and I worked with these other ones in this other parliament. So I don't see. In fact, the other ones.
All right, Violet, your time is up. Your time is up, Violet.
Mimi nasema ni lazima wacha tukue wote. So that watu wenyewe waamue ni nani wanataka.
Lakini hii perception ya it is a two-horse race, maoni yako ni yapi ukimalizia?
Kila mtu hako na haki ya kusema ile kitu anataka, either two-way horse or what. But kwangu nasema ni kweli. Tuko na horse mbili. NASA na Jubilee.
Neto, I'll finish up with you.
Catherine, I'd like to say three things. First, it is true that there are two head starts people in this particular race. There's Honorable Raila Odinga and Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta. The rest of them should be given space.
I'm sure has disputed that.
The rest of the men should be given space so that at least they bad. Leadership is about creating other leaders. So I really think we need to give them that space. But the second thing I'd like to say is allow me to thank the people of Ndiwa for voting for me twice in the by-election 2012 and also in the general election 2013. And I'd really like to request them to please vote for me again on August the 8th. We have a lot of things to do together for the next 5 years. Please vote for me. I thank you and I appreciate you.
Well, that is Agostino Neto, the Member of Parliament for Ndiwa constituency, vying as an independent candidate. He previously was elected on an ODM ticket, but he didn't make it in the nominations. We also had with us Violet Omwamba, who is also vying for Siaya County Woman Representative on a Jubilee ticket. Emmanuel Zai, who is the running mate for Dr. Ghurair Aukot, who is vying for president on a Third Way Alliance ticket, and he says he will be showing up at the presidential debate that will be taking place tomorrow at the Catholic University of East Africa. And finally, we have Elijah Lagat, who is the Member of Parliament for Chesumei constituency. He will not be defending his seat, but is instead in the NASA Brigade. He is in the presidential campaign team for the NASA presidential candidate in the North Rift. This is where we wrap it up. My name is Catherine Achenga. Thank you for watching The Frontline. On the radio studios, we had Bonim Sami and the entire crew. Do have yourself a good night and God bless you.